My name is Betsy Lynch, and I'm the CEO of the Lawrence Family Jewish Community Center at the Jacobs Family Campus in La Jolla, California, sometimes known as San Diego, California. I'm here with our amazing Fran Foreman, who is our Senior Director of Early Childhood Education and Youth Programming. And we wanted to share with you our process and thoughts around what it took for us to have a successful and meaningful educational environment during a global pandemic. And actually, this whole process began right before we were actually going to close the JCC. Fran had just returned actually in the middle of February from a Sheva conference and said to me, you know, Betsy, like this thing that they're talking about that's sort of on the horizon, like a lot of people are starting to get sick. Like, I think it's going to be bad. And I said, yeah, I think it's going to be bad too. I'm going to start to gather some people because I think this is going to stretch beyond us and we're going to need some advice and some help. I'll start to gather some people together that to provide us some support, some thought leadership about how we might approach the next steps of the things that we're going to do. So we gathered a group of experts from the medical field, from the legal field, from the field of medicine, from scientists to parents and family members and users of the JCC, so that we could be really thoughtful not only about what we can do, but also what we should do. Like I typically do, rely on our tradition to bring me clarity in moments of crisis or struggle. And what I realized, as on all of Jewish life, there were far more many questions than there were answers to what we were about to encounter. And so we began to work through question by question of what we could do. And I started to make a plan that spelled out detail for detail what was allowable. I then shared that plan with Fran, some of our other senior staff, and with the task force of people that I just mentioned. And the question that I asked them was, I know this is what we're allowed to do, but what should we do? What should we do to be an effective partner in a community health standpoint? What should we do for the parents and the families that are essential and are in need of our help? What should we do to make sure that the continuity of education and the socialization of young children can continue to happen in a safe and healthy way? And so once we learned what we could, we spent most of our time talking about what we should do and what it would mean to the families and the children. Up until this moment in time, our work had been about breadth. How many people can we get involved in the things that we were doing? Fran and I looked at each other and recognized there would be a lot of restrictions to what we would be able to do, how that would impact our staffing model, and most importantly, how would it impact the families of our preschool and our camp and what would become our all day at the J program. And because of that, we decided that we had to focus on the depth of relationship, transparency and communication, and making sure that every family knew that we were their partner through this entire pandemic. Fran has owned that from the day that we reopened in May and continues to think of thoughtful ways to make sure that no family feels like they're alone. Fran?
Wow, Betsy. I think maybe you understand now how inspiring. I'm verklempt just listening to Betsy talk, because it's absolutely true. We very formally kept in contact with parents through the entire process. So not only in terms of keeping them engaged in programming and virtual programming, which was new to us right out of the gate, and then tried to build in some structure and regulation and making sure everybody was technically up for it. But also we had to find out about what their needs were, and we surveyed parents. So even in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, we did learn that many of our parents were interested and in need of what we do in terms of providing care, early care and education for their children. So following all the guidelines, and Betzy spoke lightly about her plan, but it really was astounding to receive that. And I have to say, tremendous help for me, comforting for me, because there it was written, and everything that was written was in direct correlation and relationship to what CDC was saying about what is needed to run any kind of programming. And then we started to get individual guidance for early care and education. And we were 100% in compliance. And lo and behold, even after establishing these relationships with parents and making sure that everybody was okay, and we used all kinds of discretion as far as working with parents' individual needs and making sure that we were not just sitting pretty in our rules and applying rules to them, but it was individual by individual, family by family, and their needs in terms of this very trying time. And we presented ourselves to be there, to be a support to them. And 60 of our children and their families came back to preschool. And it wasn't one day to the next. We spent a month getting ready, getting the right equipment and getting everything sanitized and getting our staffing. We built a staff around having our own staff doing all of our sanitizing and our cleaning on a daily basis. They became one of us. This was something that we did and we are continuing to do, which is wonderful. Small examples, but we made permanent changes to our JCC based on what we learned through this process. Betzy, I'm throwing it back to you.
Fran, I'm thinking back to, sometime in April when, just like in the rest of Jewish life, there's nothing more than we like than an acronym. So we got to learn about PPE, and we got to learn about PPP, and we got to learn about all kinds of other things. The payroll protection loan was an important piece in our success in that, Fran's choices about how she would staff the facility, how to support our teachers, what their needs were, understanding their needs both as professionals, as educators, but also many of them are parents themselves, maybe not of even children in our preschool. What were they going to need in terms of when we learned school wasn't going to reopen? What were they going to need? And so by each person by person, the individualized and personalized way that we chose to build community during this time was the reason why we could build trust in a way that I think there's nothing that we've done more to build trust with our community than we've been able to in these moments. And that comes from transparent communication and understanding and listening in a way that we hadn't really had the opportunity to before. And we valued that. When I think back to when we instituted our new carpool system and when we learned that, parents weren't going to be able to come inside the JCC to meet the teachers and to see what's happening in the classrooms, the thoughtfulness around how could we effectively communicate, the depth and breadth and the special and the warmth and the things that were happening in the classroom, the hug of a teacher to a child was something so unique under these circumstances. We needed a way to capture that and to share that for parents so that they knew that the work that we were doing here was built on chesed, it was built on love, and that they would trust that the place where they were choosing to send their child under these conditions loved them as much as anyone could, and that we would do everything that we could to keep them healthy and safe. And I remember standing outside of the carpool system. It was probably on day 3. And I remember watching the parents drive away. And they would remove their mask when they got into the car. And many of them with smiles on their faces, but a lot of them with tears in their eyes. You could just see relief. You could just see relief that they could go to work. They know their child was going to be okay. And they could do the things that they needed to do to have some shred of normal life during these circumstances. And it's a credit to Fran and her entire team that we've been able to do that for now hundreds of children under these circumstances. And I feel so proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
Absolutely. And what I was going to also share is, you know, we came up, you know, we have another program now that we didn't have before. And it's called All Day at the J. And there are 80 children that are here every day also getting care and getting engagement and getting support while they're at school with distance learning. And, you know, I know that this is about what are some of the things we learned, but hey, lo and behold, the preschool and All Day at the J, who share children, older brothers and sisters, wow, we coordinate schedules. Wow, we coordinate times that we run things. So rather than having a JCC that makes families line up around our various programs, we are now holistically lining up around the needs of families. Betsy's been preaching this to us for 3 years. But you know, necessity is the mother of invention.
So true, Fran.
And we had the need to do that. And I would say principally, as a person on the ground here in the J, that is a fundamental change in how our entire J runs from this COVID-19, is there is now a check-in everywhere in the organization, and we are coordinating with each other. So it's been a journey. We still are learning. We learn every day. But we're here.
Grateful, Fran, for our partnership. I'm grateful for the inspiration that the Sheva framework continues to provide for us in remembering why we're doing all of this to begin with, and lining up for who we needed to be for families and not the other way around is driven by the values of what we learn in Sheva. And so I want to thank all of you for giving this opportunity to talk about what's happening here in San Diego. I hope you can see the little bit of sunshine coming through my window for those of you that are still experiencing winter and can't travel to visit us. Hopefully someday soon you can visit us here in San Diego. We would love it. Thank you, JCC Association, for being a part of our success and for continually checking in, making sure that we're aware of our ability to learn and our ability to grow even in these difficult times. We appreciate the opportunity to share, and thank you for all you do for us.
Thank you. Thank you.